How's that?
Fabulous.
What if we did it?
Well, you know, we're
Could we
talking
do it on the
about how
other
some
side?
people name their rods,
Yeah?
and the color of it kind of inspired me a little bit. Is there room to put guacamole?
Thinking guacamole unisex.
Guacamole hue.
Yeah. Good job. I like the way that came out.
Everybody needs a Dan. Or no,
Yeah.
I need a Dan. Is that what it was?
I want a Dan.
I want a Dan.
It's hard to know when your kids are at this stage in life, and especially when they're married, how to be helpful, because you don't want to be overbearing. But if you kind of lose your rudder in terms of, well, how do I be helpful? Trying to stay out of the way, trying to not interfere, but then knowing that sometimes they need help and trying to know how to make yourself available or communicate that. I don't always know how to be helpful, probably because I don't ask the right questions, but.
Ready?
Yeah.
There you go, baby. There's a...
Being here is just nice because it's good to be out. Fresh air, no cell phones, no business calling or anything. It's just, yeah, it's good.
We should all just do this regularly. We should budget into our lives unplugged time like this. It's just glorious. I grew up reading books to our kids about places like this. So the first thought I had is places like that still exist.
I'm just kind of taking it as it goes. So I'm excited. Just like freedom and healing comes with adventure trips, doing hard things, doing things you never thought you'd be able to do is just really, it's really beautiful to witness. And it's an honor to be a part of it. So, yeah.
When was a time in your life when your dad served to anchor you and provide you?
Oh man, I don't feel like there was ever really a time where you didn't strive to do that, and I'm really thankful for it. And it's super ironic, but I feel like the decisions that you and Mom made for me, and even though they were hard in the moment, they were a part of God's plan for my life. It's really ironic, but I think the biggest way was when I was dating Dan and you were not for it. And even though I didn't listen to you, that was like the hardest decision I've ever had to make, was not doing what you wanted. It ended up being like surrendering my family. It wasn't, I wouldn't say a negative way, but it was a God is in control, and this is about my relationship with God more than it is about any person. It was about God asking me to trust him more than anybody else. And so I think in that situation, even though we didn't agree, it anchored me more than anything.
So basically, even in my bad decisions, I helped you get anchored in your faith.
I don't know that I would say that it was bad. It was what you could do at the time. It was what you knew how to be you.
What did that separation period feel like for you?
It was horrible. It was confusing, lots of wondering, praying, begging God, are we doing the right thing? There was a point where we were kind of intentionally separating ourselves because Devin was going one way and we were saying, we really want you to hear us in this regard, and she wasn't willing to or didn't want to, and so it just felt like, have you ever seen the movie The Fiddler on the Roof? Do you remember when Octavia's daughter married outside of the faith? There's just this very painful moment where he saw his daughter, but his beliefs, he wanted to go to her, he wanted to embrace her, he wanted to bring her in, but his religious worldview didn't allow him to do that, and I kind of felt like at times I was guilty of that. So it felt horrible.
I think it was probably one of the hardest days I ever remember was my dad saying that I brought shame on the family. And that was just so unlike him. I remember driving home and just having to pull over because I just couldn't drive anymore. It was hard and it was hurtful, but at the same time, I knew that like I didn't bring shame on God. Like I just knew that. And that was okay. That was enough. And I think it was almost God just willing to be like, is this your parents' faith or is it your faith? Are you going to trust me in this?
For me, it was I was the one that needed to shift for sure, and so Devin didn't change and didn't need to shift. For me, it was seeing how terribly it hurt her. That the way she put it, the way you put it, was that I didn't trust you. And so going back to the ski trip story, she's saying there's a trip to Big White coming up. But I kind of wanted to go on the trip. Like I didn't want to let her go without me there to protect her. When you said, Daddy, I appreciate that you're worried about me and you care for me, and I am kind of young and I'm with these older kids, you can trust me, I'll be okay.
Yeah.
And I was, even though it was really, really hard, I ultimately listened to your voice. I heard you. Regard to Dan, I wasn't hearing you and I wasn't listening. And then
It's kind of a bigger deal than a ski trip, too.
well, it is a bigger deal than a ski trip. That's true. It's kind of a forever deal. So yeah, I felt the weight of that so much more at that point. But I also realized that I think God had been working in me in terms of control issues that I have, wanting to produce outcomes and trying to control outcomes, and wrestling through that. And we were really wrestling through it. At one moment, by the grace of God, I finally heard your heart, and I heard how I broke your heart, and it broke my heart. It broke my heart because I've always trusted you. Through your lens, it was like, Dad, you raised me to be discerning. You raised me to seek the Lord in all things, and I have sought the Lord, and I feel that God has led me to this place, and God wants Dan and I to be married, and you don't trust me. And she said that with great tears and sadness, and it just broke my heart. But I would describe that as a watershed moment in terms of me beginning to realize that I needed to let go, and I could let go, and I could trust you. More importantly, I did trust you. So what was all this opposition about? If you're good, I'm good. God made it clear that I needed to get out of the way. Well, Devin said something so interesting during our interview, and I've just been pondering it a lot. She said that you were following your convictions, and I think I was, but maybe I was too rooted to a certain ideal or a certain idea, a certain outcome, and it just didn't fit my paradigm, and so I was inflexible. One of the things I think about a lot is just I wasn't at all times letting love triumph over everything. I was trying to, it's like grace and law. I was definitely erring on the side of the law and not grace on many occasions. So if I could do anything over Reggie and I both, I think we would have been much more patient, much more gracious. It's hard to say whether we'd be more accepting and okay with everything, but I don't think we would have come to the conclusions that we came to so quickly. I think a dad's job, being the older person who supposedly has more experience, I'm sure I could have delved into that and discovered that, but I wasn't listening. I was just kind of more or less demanding.
How has your relationship with your dad or your daughter impacted your spiritual journey?
I would say with my dad, that's kind of where it all began because he's the one who taught me about Jesus. And from a very young age, I gave my heart to Jesus, and I truly believe that it happened when I was 6 years old. But I think the hard and ironic and also hilarious part about that is that you taught me to be so connected with God that when we were in disagreement, like not all the time, but I didn't always default to you. And that just grew my relationship with God more. And so it's like just weird to think about, but it's really cool how God has worked through that.
It's really fascinating. So you're saying those conflicts were a major part of kind of that growth of your own spiritual journey.
Yeah.
Huh. I think that's a really freeing thing for a lot of dads to hear. Mm-hmm.